If you happen to be passing through the West End and you press your ear to the Gillian Lynne Theatre, what you will hear is a 2.5-hour symphony of rapturous, spontaneous applause. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. If you're meeting me for the first time, my name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am a professional theatre critic and a content creator here in the UK, and at the beginning of this week I got to go to the opening night of Crazy for You in the West End at the Gillian Lynne Theatre. This production played regionally last year at Chichester Festival Theatre in the summer, and I reviewed it here on my channel. Not only that, I gave it a 5-star review. I called it sensational, possibly the show of the year, and at the end of the year I declared it my favourite show of 2022, all of which begs the question, why review it again? It's the same production, it's mostly the same cast, it's the same creative team, there have been no major changes, but now that it's arrived in the West End and seeing it for a second time, I really wanted to tell you how fantastic this production is, and there are more details I want to share with you about its brilliance. Also, I cannot sing the praises enough of a classic musical right now because for whatever reason, we are seeing classic shows struggling to sell tickets in the West End. They're selling better regionally, they're selling better on tour. I don't know if this is in part because their demographic is maybe an older audience who are slightly more reluctant to come into London at the moment. But for whatever reason, classic musicals like this need support. So today I want to tell you why Crazy for You might just be the best show in town and why Charlie Stemp deserves next year's Olivier Award. If you enjoyed today's review, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for many more West End and regional reviews, as well as a little bit of Broadway. Maybe I'm travelling this summer, we'll see. Maybe I can tell you about it very soon. But make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on all the stagey content. Now, let's talk about the West End transfer of Crazy for You. How do I hold it so it's not getting reflection? God, this is too shiny. Too shiny. These programs are too shiny. There we go. Crazy for You. Okay, so what is this show about? This is about Bobby Child, who is working as a banker as part of a family business, but he longs to sing and tap dance on stage. He auditions for the Zangler Follies, which are just concluding one show and getting ready to start another in a few months' time. But the show's impresario, Bella Zangler, does not care for him, and his audition is interrupted by his fiancée, Irene, who he doesn't want to marry, and by his mother, who he doesn't want to work for. But given the choice between marrying Irene and taking a banking assignment from his mother, he chooses the banking assignment, which takes him to Dead Rock, Nevada, aka the middle of just about nowhere. And upon arrival in this sleepy desert town, he meets Polly, whose father owns the Gaiety Theatre, the very same theatre that Bobby has arrived in town to repossess. But after instantly falling for Polly, Bobby hatches a plan to put on a show in the theatre in order to save it. He literally says, I know what we can do, we just have to put on a show. And he summons his friends, the chorus girls from the Zangler Follies, and they start to put on a show, with one little complication, because Polly in the meantime has found out that he is Bobby Child, and because he's been dispatched by the bank to repossess the theatre, she wants nothing to do with him, so he disguises himself as Bella Zangler, a man that Polly is so taken with, she falls in love with him. But when the real Bella Zangler arrives in town, you can imagine the hilarity and confusion that ensues. So this is an old-fashioned style of show, stringing together a bunch of beautiful Gershwin songs, but much like the musical 42nd Street, this was actually written and compiled much later than the time period that it seems to evoke. It looks and sounds and feels like a Golden Age musical, but in reality it was actually produced for the first time much later. But it has that unmistakable charm and whimsy, the entire conceit of the plot. We just need to put on a show in order to save the local theatre in this dusty town, the whole mistaken identity thing, the love story that runs through the entirety of it, the idea of rejecting capitalism because he just longs to tap dance on a stage. In many ways it's a love letter to the power of dance and Lynne Theatre. And how better for that love letter to be scored than with these beautiful toe-tapping Gershwin songs. I mean, it has such hits in there. Things like I've Got Rhythm, which is still in my head days later. Who could ask for anything more? One of my favourite love songs of all time, Someone to Watch Over Me. I think the lyrics to this are just so sentimental and gentle and sweet. And then hits like the title song Crazy for You, like Nice Work If You Can Get It, Embraceable You. Honestly, it's packed full of brilliant songs. The other reason why I think this show is so fantastic is because you have shows like 42nd Street that will pay tribute to theatre and performance and dance within its own setting, within its own world. 42nd Street takes place exclusively inside a theatre where they're getting ready to put on a show on Broadway. And I love it for that. But Crazy for You has this extra level of charm because it has all of these fantastic chorus line dancers and all this razzmatazz performance juxtaposed with the slightly flabbergasted local community of Dead Rock, Nevada, where much of the show is taking place. It transports the glitz and the sequins and the feathers of the Follies to this completely unexpected location, and it's the parallel between those two things that gives us a lot of comedy, but also just a lot of joy. A huge amount of praise also has to go to Ken Ludwig, who has written the book for this production and manages to capture the sort of period-appropriate charm and feel while giving it this slightly contemporary sensibility in its humour. You wouldn't call it modern or up to date, but it's still really funny. The mistaken identity idea, all of these different romances and the way that they are balanced. Nothing feels misogynistic, which it often can in a lot of these older shows. Instead, the show is filled with these willful and determined female characters who are all afforded a huge amount of agency. So that's the material and why it works. But what is so special about this particular production? Let me tell you. So this production is just glorious, and so much of that is because of its director and choreographer Susan Stroman, the visionary, creative Susan Stroman. Now, Susan Stroman has been attached to Crazy for You for some time. She did the original Broadway choreography, and she has such an understanding of the tone of this show, of its charm, of its comedy, of its sweeping romance. And what she delivers with this production is that perfect, shiny veneer of Broadway. There is such an attention to detail in the way that she has staged this show and put it together. When we have the overture and we have these little things that pop up at the front of the stage to allow smoke to fill the front of the stage area. We have this curtain reveal to some Follies dancers. There's an early number in the show where Bobby is performing and we have a chorus girl magically appearing out of a box, and then the others appear behind these statues that spin around on the proscenium. When we go from New York to Dead Rock, Nevada, all of the parts of the proscenium rotate around their own axis to deliver a new framing because the show has transported location. Not to mention, when we arrive in Dead Rock, Nevada, there is a hay bale turning by itself that just goes across the width of the stage. It's those little details that are so charming and so whimsical. Details that a lesser director wouldn't consider important. The plot goes on without them. They might get a laugh, they might get a little bit of applause, they might not. But what Susan Stroman seizes is the opportunity to do something delightful consistently throughout the show, and that is what makes it feel so joyful. That is what this production does. It reverberates with a joy that fills the auditorium, and you cannot help but be overcome by it. This is one of those shows where every single number has that sort of a show-stopping feel. You get the most raucous applause. There's some that are just such huge production numbers that go on for so long. There is such a whirlwind of dance happening on that stage, but it's so thrilling, and the audience response definitely reflects that. Inarguably, the best part of Susan Stroman's contribution to this show is her choreography. It's just glorious. There is so much of it that is just classic. You have the chorus lines, you have a bit of a kick line moment, you have so much tap. The whole thing is filled with tap. We have these gorgeous balletic dance duets, which are rhapsodic and romantic. We have these stylish company numbers. We have some very traditional dance numbers, especially in the early New York scenes. And then when we go to Dead Rock, Nevada, the way they execute these company numbers, the choreography is so clever and so whimsical because they are using things around them, and they're using the most brilliant, ingenious staging. This is a feature of the show that has been done before. It's not new for this production, but the way that they are tap dancing on bits of metal, the way that they are sliding down sheets of metal, the way that they are leaping over each other's heads. It's acrobatic, it's skillful, it's playful, which is something I really appreciate in choreography, especially for a show like this, where you have all of these talented chorus girl dancers partnering with the local men of the community who are not performers. There's a number where Charlie Stemp cuts off various lengths of rope with an axe in rhythm and then hands them to the girls, and then the girls hold the rope and the men play them like they're upright basses, tilting them from side to side. It's very visually striking, it's very clever, but it's just fun. This peaks with the last number of Act 1, I've Got Rhythm, unmistakably the highlight moment of the show, so I'm going to tell you about it in a little bit in its own section. But it's not the only show-stopping moment in the show, because there is a scene in Act 2 after they have a meeting deciding what they want to do about the theatre, and within the show, this entire number is born out of one of my favourite conventions in older musicals, which is when characters hear just like a turn of phrase or a sentence that they enjoy, and then they repeat it, and then it becomes an entire song. It happens in Singin' in the Rain with Moses Supposes, it kind of happens in Half a Sixpence with Pick Out a Simple Tune, but it happens here when you have these two British characters who just say stiff upper lip and a couple other sentences, and that makes a company number. It's that wonderful trope of, oh, what a fun sentence that was. Let's do a whole song about it and move all this furniture around. And then there's a Les Mis reference at the end with a flag. But the choreography is performed indefatigably and it is staged with such incomparable wit. I need to tell you about some of the other members of this creative team. William Ivy Long has done the costume design. They, of course, look beautiful. I particularly love the pink showgirl outfits and wig combination. I think that just looks like glorious dreamlike candy floss. 2023 Tony Award winner Beowulf Borrett has done the set design. It's very clever. It's very old-timey to have these set pieces that come in, which is appropriate for this show. It makes it feel classic, but then there are a few secretive things that the staging can do as well that, again, just give us that extra level of magic. I'm not going to spoil them for you because I think it's an awe-inspiring moment in the show and I want you to be able to experience that. I want to talk about the orchestrations and the music here. So the original orchestrations, William David Braun. The original arrangements were by Peter Howard. The new arrangements are by David Crane, and the new orchestrations are by Doug Besterman and Mark Cumberland. And the whole thing has been musically directed by Alan Williams. I also want to mention Campbell Young, who is credited with the wigs, hair and makeup design. There are some terrific wigs in this production, and Charlie Stemp has to transform between playing Bobby Child and being in disguise as Bella Zangler, and has to do a tremendous amount of choreography while wearing this wig, and the fact that it doesn't fall off of his head, I think that's a remarkable achievement. Now, as promised, I am aching to tell you about the highlight moment of the show. So like I mentioned before, there are a host of show-stopping numbers in this show. Not since maybe Six the Musical have I seen a show where every single number gets this huge response, because Charlie Stemp has this number towards the beginning of the show where he really dances for the first time, and he does so much choreography that he gets huge applause at the end. He has this extended dance with Polly moments after they first meet in Dead Rock, but the real highlight moment of the show comes towards the end of Act 1, and it gets a mid-Act 1 standing ovation technically because there are seconds of scene that happen afterwards, but it is the number I've Got Rhythm. It is a long production number, and it takes place moments before the show is meant to open at the Gaiety Theatre, but the cast have just discovered that no one has turned up and bought any tickets, which is a good lesson about theatre marketing. Really crazy for you as a show about the importance of theatre marketing, but we'll talk about that another time. What happens here is this relentless positivity in the face of this hugely disappointing news gives way to a glorious production number where, for no particular reason other than for the sheer joy of it, all of these characters are dancing together out in the street and improvising choreography with whatever pieces of random scraps they can find. They have these sheets of corrugated iron that people are sliding down, that people are tapping over. They have dustbin lids, they have pickaxes that the girls are standing on, they lift them up, they twirl them round. We get some visually stunning things in this production number. The whole thing is just relentless choreography. If you saw Anything Goes at the Barbican and that amazing Act 1 finale that they had with the title song Anything Goes, this has exactly the same feel to it and exactly the same energy that explodes from the stage. It's a hugely winning song. The arrangements, the orchestrations, the dance arrangements, fantastic. It's just pure, perfect, classic musical theatre, and it honestly does not get much better than this. So let me tell you about the performances. I need to tell you about this show's leading man, Charlie Stemp. I raved about his performance last year in Chichester, and I think if possible he is even better here. He has such showmanship, the kind that comes around rarely, because there are a whole host of impressive leading men in musical theatre, but not so many that dance the way that he does, and with the charisma and the charm and the character that he does. It's one thing to be able to execute these steps, But the way that he breathes such life and such wit into this choreography, he dances in so many different ways throughout this show. We have this first number that he does when he is auditioning, and his dancing is boyish and giddy and charming and light-hearted. Moments later, he then executes the steps with a little bit more credibility when he is dancing and it's a little bit more suave. His dances with Polly, of course, romantic and longing, but not until the second act, when he performs an entire dance break in the song Nice Work If You Can Get It, do we see him really dancing with such complete conviction. It feels like a coming-of-age moment for his character because he's been such a giddy, love-struck boy for so much of the show, and with this song he's reflecting on the love that he believes to have lost, and he dances with such refinement and such polish and such attack and panache. It's exceptional to watch. And I am ready to personally hand him the Olivier Award just for what he does with dance in this show and the way that he performs using dance as a medium. But he is also incredibly funny, hugely charming. His impression of Tom Eden's Bella Zangler is hysterically funny. And I know I keep repeating words in this review, but he has a charm and a charisma that feels very current, with a characterization that also feels very classic. It feels very Gene Kelly. It feels very Fred Astaire, but with a playfulness and a cheekiness that feels a little bit more Dick Van Dyke. I think he's just the most wonderful leading man, and people ought to be raving about his performance in this show. Opposite him, Carly Anderson is just delightful as Polly. She is willful and she is independent, and she has this passionate fire that melts into a love. Of course, she dances sensationally. She gives us the best vocal performances in the show. She has such a warmth to her character while still having a tremendous amount of bite. And hers is a really important characterization that she pitches just perfectly, because in a world of musical theatre where people are singing and dancing and things are appearing and there's smoke and there's curtains and all of this stuff, everything can start to feel slightly ludicrous. And only by her giving us this down-to-earth, no-nonsense portrayal do we have a yardstick by which the legitimate ludicrousness of Charlie Stemp's character can be measured. Ludicrosity, I don't know. But she is a brilliant foil to him in that sense, and the way that the romantic plotline blossoms between them is just lovely to watch. Now, there's also tremendous support from the featured cast members. Tom Eden plays Bella Zangler. We meet him at the beginning of the show, and then not really until the end of the first act again, but he is hysterically funny in his desperation, in his impatience. He has a whole host of winning one-liners. Tom Eden is one of the funniest actors I've ever seen on stage, because the way that he combines a brilliant physicality, a physicality that first got him noticed in a big way for One Man, Two Governors, and a wonderful characterization makes for such excellent performances. He has a number with Charlie in the second act where the two of them, who are both dressed identically, sort of mirror each other. The song itself is a little bit unremarkable, but the way that it's staged is very funny and very charming. It feels like a joke that almost expires at the beginning of that song, and you don't really know how it's going to go on for as long as it does and keep getting laughs, but somehow the laughs build, and it's because of the way that they both commit to it. Also, I have to talk about the staging of this number briefly, because what I love in comedy is when you set something up and repeat it and then turn it on its head. And what's so funny here is they are mirroring each other exactly, and you get so many jokes out of the mirroring, out of them doing unusual things. And they're looking at each other across this table and staring at each other and not sure what to make of it. And they haven't really had this realization moment of realizing who the other one is, if not a reflection. But the moment at which, and I can't remember exactly what it is that first breaks it, if it's Charlie Stemp offering him a glass of something or filling up his glass with something, I don't know. And Tom Eden says thank you back to Charlie Stemp and acknowledges the shattering of the symmetry. It's hilarious to suddenly break that and then just play it off so casually. There are so many more astonishing cast members in this revival. Natalie Kasanga gives a delicious vocal. Oh my gosh, her tone when she is singing the song Naughty Baby in the second act. I love how it is characterized. I love how demure she plays it. I think she could afford to play up the comedy of that number just a little bit. She's playing sort of a very dry and sarcastic character, but it's still a comedy number that gets a lot of laughs because of how it's staged, because she's doing choreography and ends up injuring the man that she is performing to a lot. I feel like she could be a little bit more aware that she's playing a comedy number, but it is a challenging balance to get right, because she's not a clown, she's quite a serious character, but she's a serious character that we laugh at nonetheless. The man in that number with her is Matthew Craig, who plays Lank Hawkins. He is deeply passionate. He gives us some very hilarious histrionics throughout the show. I really enjoy his performance, and you warm to his character a lot over the course of the thing. Kaylee Thadani is fantastic as Tess. She's characterized with such sass. Marilyn Cutts is withering as Lottie Child, Bobby's mother. And standout ensemble performances come from Joshua Nakemdalim and Ella Valentine. But unexpectedly, there are two more people who managed to steal every scene that they are in. And they are Rena Fatania and Sam Harrison. They play English tourists who are trying to put together a guidebook about the American West, and they come to review the hotel, restaurant, and tavern, which practically is only really one of those things, but has been claiming to be all three. They overstay their welcome almost immediately and exhaust the proprietor, Lank Hawkins, with all of their requests. But this comedy laugh that they keep doing every time they delightedly leave the stage, charmed by his gruffness and by his American ways, it gets such a laugh. The way they play up this obnoxious British stereotype delights a British audience. And they both take these little moments that they have in the show and they both just run with them to these hysterically characterized, broad caricature performances. They're just fantastic. It's artful scene stealing is what it is. But those have been my thoughts about Crazy for You at the Gillian Lynne Theatre. If you are a fan of classic musicals, if you have any kind of a fondness for this genre or for dance at all, it's imperative that you go and see this show. But I would encourage a lot of other people to as well. If you've only seen more contemporary shows, this show is funny, this show is romantic, and it will blow your mind with the things that it does on that stage. Also, in less than a year's time, when the Olivier Awards do roll around, everybody is going to be talking about Charlie Stemp, and if you want to be part of that conversation, you have to go and see him in Crazy for You. His performance truly one for the ages. So if I can convince you of anything today, it's to buy tickets and go and see what was my favourite show of 2022, Crazy for You at the Gillian Lynne Theatre. Thank you for watching this review. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you have, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for many more reviews coming very soon about all your favourite shows. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!